What metta is, some definitions of metta, and where it fits in with the system of practice. So as we saw, just as a mother who has an only son would protect her only son with her life, so one should cultivate a boundless mind to all living beings. So that's from the Metta Sutta. So if we move on a slide. We also had a look that the fundamental Buddhist teaching is conditionality. And the words of Assaji to Shariputra when they first met, regarding dharmas that arise from a cause, the Tathagata has taught their cause and also their cessation. Those were the words of the great mendicant. And then we also looked at the 5 different types of conditionality and how they fitted in with our stages of practice, both in terms of meditation and practicing off the cushion. And can see how there's a cyclical and a progressive trend within that. So this evening, we're going to be looking at focus and breath, which is the next slide. And there we go. So over the next 8 weeks, we're going to be looking at focus and breath a couple of times. So this is the first one. So I'm going to start off with just saying there's 3 main stages to meditation. So the first stage is settling in, which in terms of the system of practice has an element of integration to it. Then a stage of focus, which can be any aspect of the system, and also sitting on at the end, which can have a hint of spiritual receptivity about it. So it's really important that when we meditate, we always go through these stages of meditation. You sometimes think, oh, the mindfulness of breathing has 4 stages, the Mettā Bhavana has 5 stages. But in a way, this is the setting for the whole meditation. So the settling in stage is fundamental to our meditation practice. So it creates space between our everyday life and meditation. And what we're doing specifically in the settling in phase is increasing our awareness of body and mind, or if you like, of the 6 senses. So the way I sometimes think about it is our awareness is a body of water. And if you can imagine the kind of things that go on in our lives, if we're meditating in the morning, the things that we're going to be planning for, we're meditating in the evening, things that may have happened during the day, they kind of enter this body of water. And depending on the quality of our awareness, one of 2 things can happen. So I'll have the first slide, next slide. So if our body of awareness is puddle-like, and the elephant of whatever's going on in our mind comes along, is going to make a big splash. It's going to be a bit messy. So if we don't do a settling in period, this is much more likely what's going to happen in our meditation. Things from the day, things from our life is going to penetrate. I think with Simnati, you've skipped a few. There we go. Thank you. Or if we do the settling in, maybe our awareness is a bit more like a lake and the elephant can come along, but it would just create ripples in the lake rather than splashing everywhere. So this, in a way, is the purpose of settling in. We want to increase our awareness, and this is really important. So we're going to look at how we do that in a moment. So we'll move on. So we're going to talk next. think we've missed a slide there. Siddhartha. Feeling tone would be good. There we go. Vedana. What is Vedana? Feeling tone. So most of you now should be familiar with Vedana or feeling tone. If you want more information around Vedana, I think there's 1 or 2 things on our YouTube channel. Quick plug. So our feeling tone can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So all sense experience has a Vedana. Remembering also the mind or the heart is also a sense in Buddhism. So any part of our experience we can find is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And the Vedana, this is quite important, is a result of past conditionality. So it's just the result of past actions. Why I find something pleasant and someone else finds it maybe unpleasant or neutral is a result of past conditioning. So we notice the Vedana without getting necessarily caught up into, why do I have a pleasant Vedana, a pleasant feeling tone? Say in the Mettā Bhavana when I bring a particular person to mind. It is as it is. So I think that's quite important. And why we just try to acknowledge the Vedana as it is our natural tendency is to move on from the Vedana. If we have a pleasant experience, we want to pull it towards ourselves. If it's an unpleasant experience, we want to push it away. And if it's a neutral experience, we're just going to get bored and look for something else. And maybe that's why some people actually find the 3rd stage, the neutral person, on the Mettā Bhavana, is maybe the hardest stage, the one we're more likely to get distracted. So we need to be aware of Vedana as we go into our settling in. So if we can now have the body, which is the next slide, just one. So we may have a look through the senses, which are connected with the body. So when we settle in, we may be aware of sounds around us, smells in the room, taste, and so on. And we also become particularly aware of the body. The body is really important in meditation because it's where everything else happens. So if we're not really aware of the body, then we're probably missing an aspect out of our meditation. Usually when I do a kind of a body scan, as we've done the body scan, we'll have a look at the emotions. So if we can have a closer look at the emotions. Move forward one. So our emotions are usually felt somewhere in the body. So we have love, desire, compassion, anger, stress, anxiety, and so on. So I think partly, particularly as we get used to the process of settling in, we may feel things in the body and we're maybe not sure what they actually are. So from that point of view, we sometimes just have to work out, is anger the right word for what we're experiencing? It may well be. It may be stronger, something like hatred, or it may be, for me, sometimes I confuse anger and frustration, where anger tends to be a unskillful emotion or mental event, and frustration usually has wanting something better at its root. So it's often frustration, for me, is more of a skillful mental event or emotion. And sometimes we have to look really close at what's going on. We move forward one. So you may not have noticed that, but hidden at the top of the body there, around the throat area, I put grief. So sometimes what's going on emotionally may not actually be that apparent. So sometimes you just have to look. I put grief there for a reason. I personally, if I'm experiencing grief, will feel it around here, and I know other people sometimes do as well. Could be somewhere totally different, or a different emotion tends to inhabit that area of the body. So we will sometimes have to look quite closely just to see what's going on. And usually what we do with the emotions is acknowledge the feeling tone without getting caught up in them. But occasionally there may be something going on with the emotions, or even sometimes thoughts, which may be driven by those emotions, which needs our attention, in which case resolving maybe something, a dilemma in our lives, becomes the focus of the meditation rather than the practice that we'd sat down to do. We can move on one. So after emotions, we have thoughts. Thoughts is nicely kind of written all over the place. That probably sums up my thoughts. Yeah, so our thoughts can be about all sorts of things. So we've got a picture of the Buddhist center there, so it may be Buddhist related. I've got a picture of a car, which some of you know is an interest of mine. There's a computer screen with "do more" written on it, and we also have family. Just some examples of thoughts. Thoughts will be there. Sometimes there's a strong train of thought, in which case we probably need to acknowledge the feeling tone of that. It may be driven by an emotion, particularly if our thoughts are playing out something that has happened or is going to happen. There's usually an emotional component we may not have recognized at this stage. So thoughts. So broadening our awareness out. So as part of the settling in, we want to be aware of our body, our emotions, and our thoughts. And that leads us on to the next slide. And if we have this awareness of body, emotion, and mind, in a way, we have what I sometimes call the breadth of awareness as opposed to the focus. So the breadth is this kind of whole sense of ourselves, as I've called it there. And that is the context of where the focus takes place. So I don't know if you can see on our meditator there, there's some magnifying glasses. Maybe where we're focusing, maybe if we're using phrases in the Mettā Bhavana, our focus could be up here, maybe higher up in the chest, lower down in the chest, even in the abdomen. Who knows? But the focus takes place within the breadth of awareness, within this whole sense of ourselves. So we're set up, we've gone into the period of focus, and what's going to happen? We'll get distracted. That's what normally happens. I've been meditating 30 years and I still get distracted. So if you're still getting distracted, that's normal, really. So it's worth also being aware, one of the aspects of meditation is spotting our distractions. So the fact that our mind is distracted or our hearts are distracted makes it easier in a way for us to meditate, because it's easier to spot those distractions. So being aware of that. So what do we do when we have a distraction, when we wander off from the focus? So we've got one more slide at this point. It's what I personally, in my own practice, refer to as KRR. So the first thing we do when we've found that we're distracted is to respond with kindness. So this is really important. In a way, as I just said, part of the meditation is spotting those distractions. So you spotted the distraction. Great, big tick. Why beat yourself up about it? Why allow a train of thought to go on, oh, I'm distracted, I can't meditate, and beat yourself up? You've spotted it, you are meditating. And respond to that distraction with kindness, both the process of being distracted and maybe to the distraction itself. So I think this is quite important. Once we've responded with kindness, we need to bring ourselves back, or we return to our breadth of awareness. So we need to anchor ourselves in that whole sense of ourselves again. And again, this is important. If we're just distracted and then go straight back to the focus, we're probably going to get distracted again pretty soon. If we take our time and go kindness, feel the body, maybe adjust the posture in ways we'll be talking about in a few weeks' time. Only when you've re-engaged with the breath, with the whole sense of ourselves, do we return to the focus. So KRR, that's what I personally do, and I find that quite useful. Something you may want to try out. You may have other ways of doing that, but the kindness is the really important aspect there. So that's all I've got to say at the moment in terms of focus and breath.